Hey, Candace, thank you so much for joining me. I just, when I think of you and how we met immediately at the coffee shop, you were somebody that I wanted to be around more, that I wanted to lean on and just have this draw that I respect you. I want to know from your perspective, how to lead, because that's what I saw when I first met you. So Candace, just introduce yourself and kind of tell what you're doing right now.
Well, I'm Candace Reese Walters. I am first a mother, a wife. I've owned my own business for 20 years this year, and it's Envision Global Corporation. It's based upon business management consulting, public relations, marketing, pretty much anything that is going to make your business successful. That's what my company specializes in. And it also always has a philanthropic leg. Everything that I do, I want it to involve giving back. And what pulls my heartstrings is single moms and being mothers of sons, especially sons of color, and what that plight looks like. But I also have helped several other organizations with their missions and goals, as well as the executives and elite entrepreneurs that basically are seeking to help. So, and I always tell people, don't try to reinvent the wheel. If you have funding, then put it toward that mission that does pull your heartstrings. And if you're on that other side, try to identify companies who actually support your mission. And that way, everybody doesn't have an organization or a foundation popping up every other day, because at that point, if we unify, and I think that's what kind of we're here to talk about. If we participate in unity in every aspect of what we're doing, then we can advance our missions a lot easier that way.
Yeah, so we got connected with the theme or brand empowering women. You were involved with our conference after that, again, because I fell in love with you immediately. And so I just wanted, to be around you for one, and then your purpose of helping others and the leadership there. When we started that empowering women, I didn't even realize that I was building a diverse committee, but it was the June before we had to print the magazine for our first conference. And I looked at the cover, it was all these different faces. And there was just one Black girl on the cover. And I was like, we have to fix this. This is not we were very diverse, but we weren't diverse with Black women. And so when we came to Tuscaloosa for our event, it was a conscious effort. And I'd like to hear, before we kind of dive into what's going on today in our world, it was difficult for me to even ask and to go into that mindset of I want this to represent the world, but I feel like if I ask for you to come and join me because I need a diverse group, this is the wrong reason, right? And so, but at the same time, if you don't see somebody that looks like you don't want to show up either. And so it's been a very difficult process. But we accomplished a more diverse committee, and I think it takes steps and intention. What are your thoughts there on how to, get a representation from the Black community with us?
Traditionally, well, let me go back first. I think you're doing a phenomenal job. I think that you are an example of what a true ally means. And I want to kind of express more about that, as we continue to talk. But you are what that looks like. So for me, traditionally, having been in business for quite a while, I've attended conferences and empowerment, seminars and all of these things. And you're exactly right. They have not looked representative of me. However, if you want to operate in a business, if you want to do well, if you want to reach the top or whatever that means to you, then you're going to have to play the game. And traditionally, African Americans, and with what your platform stands for, with women, African American women, have had to just play the game. It's an unfortunate thing, but as you said, the layers of how do we move forward? How do we press the go button? How do we go from we're ranting, we're raging, we're emotional, we want to do, the right thing to actually taking the steps to move forward? You're doing that. So I don't think that there should be any type of shame or any type of hesitation for you to reach out to people and give them that very message. Look, I don't know how to go about this, but I do know that I want an inclusive type of organization that pushes every one of us forward. And together we are always stronger. And I really commend you for doing that. It is something that is very close to my heart. But honestly, Charlie, you have the ability and the platform to do more than I do in that aspect.
Yeah, and I think I have a unique perspective too. I give a fun example of being like one of the only girls on the basketball team, white girls on the basketball team where I grew up in. We played in Hale County when I was in high school, and I loved those girls. I mean, they were my girls, and I love basketball, and I think that sports gives us a lot of things that we can talk about in leadership. But I also, to your point, I have a vast audience or a platform that, the reason why I called you, and I called you before I talked to my team, and I said, I want, or text you back because you were telling me about your travel, was, you're somebody that I feel like I could talk to, and that when I don't know, we have to lean on each other. And, sometimes I'm scared. Okay, what if I say the wrong thing? Or what if I mispronounce someone's name? Or, you get these nervous things, but, also sometimes I miss Black women around me. If that sounds weird, I don't know. But like, because I grew up and I always had, my friends around me of all, races. But the energy, the passion, the soul, I love all of that about the Black community. And so, even saying women of color, people of color, that's another issue that that came up. Like, I call them Black ladies or Black girls or whatever. Like, why the shift? But I was talking about this, and it's more inclusive. It's a scope outside of just the Black community. But I want to stay and talk about the Black community today, because that is where our nation, this is June the 2nd that we're recording this, and there is a lot of hurt and anger and sadness, and rightfully so. And being able to talk through what can we do to help. Back in it was Black History Month, and I took my children to the Civil Rights Museum in Birmingham. I just felt it was important. It was this part of my journey, right, of figuring out diversity and what to teach my children. And there were protests in the street. There were things that had to happen to move our country forward. So from your perspective, do you think needs to happen? Then what can we focus on doing right now? That's a lot.
Shall I roll out the scroll?
Right.
And that's where I guess I feel like I have such a challenge at times, because I look at so many things that I want to do, but I'm one person. So if you know me from a personal or a business, specifically a business aspect, my biggest thing is strategy constantly. I don't ever try to judge how people react. People talk about riots that are actually protests, that there are some people who are planted there specifically to turn it into something evil when it was meant for a peaceful outcry. There are, and even my husband and I kind of went back and forth on, because he's very conservative on a lot of things. And, but he's really realizing, now this is a really serious thing. And, not that he hasn't before, but I think that he's been sheltered from some things too. And I always call him corporate America because, that's kind of how he's a very diplomatic, this is how we should do things and this is how people need to move the needle forward. And I'm kind of like, okay, but wait, there's some things that, pieces that sometimes you're missing. And we're able to just have those conversations. And we're both Black. So if he has a level of understanding here and I have a level of understanding here, then I have to understand that you would have a different level of understanding than even we do. So I think that's where it starts. You got to meet people where they are. And then you slowly try to elevate them to a place to where there is an understanding and there is a strategy put in place where everybody can do their part. I was, thinking about an example, and it's so funny how things in our daily lives actually happen, and it makes you compare and gives you analogies. I remember last week I bought a bag of tomatoes, and I saw one of them was kind of looking a little shaky, but I forgot to take them out of the bag, and a couple of days later, they were all bad. So, and we know this example, where I'm going. When you look at society, and even we're talking about police right now, when people say, they're not all cops are not bad cops. Well, I know that for a fact. I have a couple of friends who have been, who are police. One of them is retired, and I know that they're not bad people. And each of them have expressed their issues with the cops that are bad. So going back to my tomato analogy, if you have 50 good cops and one bad cop, and they all work together, you have 51 bad cops. If those 50 are not working to help that one to be a better cop. So those tomatoes spoiled because I had one bad tomato that was in the mix, and it ruined all of it. If you're not going to take a stand, and I know that's hard. I know it's tough. I know that for a person who is not of color to stand up to their grandmother, their grandfather, their boss at work, their husband, their wife, their colleagues, their friends, their whoever, that's a tough thing. I acknowledge that. But you know what's tougher? Being a Black American. That's tough. Being a mother of sons and a pretty brown bonus daughter that I have, and a 5-year-old grandson that I love, and being afraid of this world that they're in, that's a lot tougher than having a conversation that might make you feel a little uneasy. That's a whole lot tougher. And so I encourage, the first step is to have those conversations like what we're doing today. When I talk about you being an ally, you didn't text me to say, hey, I'm trying to sell tickets to my next whatever, and I need to get a Black woman to talk about what's going on. That's not what you said. You expressed something from the heart that I could relate to, and that's what I call a true ally. And when you put this information out to people that may not understand or agree with you, that's an ally, because that's that first step. And that's what I can acknowledge. And that's all that people of color, and I say Black people, yes, but that's, Hispanic people, that's anyone who has been disenfranchised in this country and really in this world, but what we're talking about right now is a problem. I am okay with all lives matter. I am okay with Blue Lives Matter. I believe that we live in a global humanity, but if I am talking about my Black life right now in danger, I don't need to hear those things. I need you to address my Black life right now. And so that's kind of where I want us to come from, a humane place. I want us to come from a place of, what if this is my mom? What if this is my son? How do I decide as a white mother that I am going to teach my children not to say that I color, because you got to acknowledge my color. That's what makes me who I am. But to say, I honor you for who you are. And reciprocally, they honor you for who you are. That's how you move the needle forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. And having, sons, 2 sons and a daughter, I think, how am I going to raise them? Because they are privileged children, where they go to schools where it's not equal. And, I think, they do play sports, and that helps them. But it makes me want, I don't know, it makes me want to have the conversations. It makes me want to put them in the environment and something to happen to where we have a conversation. So for example, right now, I try to think, what are they seeing? Because we're not watching the news where they're seeing it or whatever, but they're on their phones. So I have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old. And so he's absorbing this through media and without me. And so I was talking to Carter about this. It's like, I need to talk to them. I need to know, I need to, when things happen or they say something kind of that they've heard from a friend, we address it immediately. Right. But I don't think that is all you can do. You can't just focus on, I'm going to protect my family. My family is going to be good and not care who they're hanging around or the community at large. And so when I see, what you would call a riot in the street, I think, well, something has to happen to get attention. And I hope that it's more peaceful. I hope that we can all, I love seeing that I saw New Zealand was marching this morning. I love seeing that public display of what matters. But not everybody sees it that way, right? And we have to respect, like, this is how this person was raised. This is how they express things. They just empathize with the person who is just trying to do something and they don't necessarily know what to do. And hopefully, of course, property and lives and that should have been in a different order. But that we don't need that. We need the peaceful approach that will get things done, and the strategy of, okay, what laws need to change? What, it's not just training an officer, but the control of whether they can take a life or not. I've been reading a lot of these stories, which I try not to stay in the news most of the time and hear a lot of these stories because I have deep sadness. Like yesterday, I was crying, right? And that it was just like, not on the screen, I'm talking about later, because the empathy in me, I can feel that sadness. When you joined me first before we pushed record, I could already feel this deep sadness and confusion, but also know, like, you are a woman in our industry that we can lean on for leadership and support. And how exhausting is that at the same time? So just thank you, Candace, for sharing your heart with me and trying to. Thanks for the confirmation that we're on the right track. But when I look at numbers for our businesses and just women that work and see the discrepancy, we're fighting against white male first, and then black male, and then women, black women. It was kind of the hierarchy, and then other women of color kind of fall in after that. But it's facts, it's stats, it's, how can we address that and change that?
Yeah, so I want to touch on a few things that you just said. When you talk about your conversation with your son, it's an ongoing conversation. It doesn't stop. And when I say ongoing, it's not just you initiating. What I encourage everyone to do is for their children, to encourage their children to initiate the conversation when they see something. Not we have to always go ask. We do have to stay, we're the oversight. I always say I have moved from manager to advisor with my sons because they're 21 and 26. Now, of course, I have bonus kids now, so I'm, still a manager from a standpoint of support system. But I have always had the relationship. One of the tips that I give moms is, especially if you have boys, because at a certain point they don't talk.
Right. Yeah, mine's in it right now. Yes.
You're gonna have to pull information out of them. But the one thing that I was really fortunate to do was have great male mentors around them and people to, when I didn't know with rearing boys, I asked. And I constantly asked, and I constantly had people in their lives. They grew up, I was a single mom the majority of the time, pretty much. And even when I was married, it felt like I was a single mom for a short period of time. But you have to ask. And it has to be an ongoing thing. I tell with boys, I would go for walks with my sons, and I wouldn't say anything, and they would just tell me everything that I wanted to hear, and everything that I needed to know. And just listening, just putting yourself in a position to listen in a non-judgmental way. That's one of those things. Another thing, when we talk about the protests, the peaceful protests, we look back at, from a job situation, Colin Kaepernick, he peacefully kneeled. It was never about the flag. It was always about what is going on right now. He started kneeling because of these very things. And when you don't accept our peace and our peaceful protest and our peaceful outcry, this is what has resulted. And the two things that I still want to point out on that is, a lot of times I was watching the news, people are planting the bricks, planting these things for us to, go out and, once that rage is feeling, and once the police are gathering, it's like, oh, there's a pile of bricks. Some of those people didn't bring that stuff.
Right.
Some of that stuff has been incited by people who want African American people to look bad and to look like we don't know how to handle ourselves. And that's just not okay. So I ask people to, as someone who's worked in media for a number of years, look at the story behind the story. Do your due diligence. If you're a biblical person, study to show thyself approved. Understand, learn and understand, listen, pay attention. Don't just think that what you're being fed is the correct information. It's not always. And especially when you feel like that's what supports your views, that sometimes your views aren't okay. Sometimes, you're using certain things to support that longevity of those generational views that are absolutely wrong. Think about you and I. If we just decided to base when we met off of color and off of generational things, we wouldn't have a conversation today.
Right.
But because we are able to move beyond that, because I could be full of rage and say I hate white people easily. I could say that. I could say I hate men for things that happened in past, relationships. Right. But that's a choice. I don't choose to do that. And all we're asking is for people to not choose to do that to us. Actually to have an understanding. And you're right. I keep pausing because it's an emotional thing for me. I've had my own situation. I've had the police come into a home that I was in, that I owned, and just try to arrest me, to break into a home over something that I was not even, I've had my 26-year-old son to be pulled over, and specifically we had college tags on every one of our cars, so that, and that's the thing Black people have to do, that there's a privilege that others don't. College tags so that the car that he's driving doesn't look like there's a thug driving it. Thug and right. And my son was pulled over, and he was made to get out and lay down on the ground, and told that that car had been reported stolen. It's fully insured, college tags, fully paid for, and yet my son, and he comes home and he lays his head on my lap and cries.
We were watching this with our children. I'm hesitant to say this because it's probably not age appropriate, but it was a show on the Netflix, and the name is lost me now. But he's a football player, or a kid that is trying to become a football player that goes to like Beverly Hills and
All-American.
Yes.
Love it. Yes.
It was so good. So we all, like, as a family, watched that, and there is a time where the boy is pulled over and taken out of the car, and the one that's grown up in this environment knows to be quiet, knows to be nice, it's like look out, whatever. And my kids are like, what is happening? Like, why? And so even white people who don't get it, that haven't, even they maybe have, they don't understand because they've never seen it, that this is real. This is how people are treated. This is, and another side of that is like the social economic side of things. And, I grew up poor, single mom, trying to, make ends meet. We had food stamps. We had, we're taking care of ourselves while mom's going to school. All the things that and didn't have the nicest clothes or whatever, and you go into school and you're judged immediately on that. That is still not the same as doing nothing, looking the part, and still being judged, right? So I mean, I just want to say, like, it's true, and have empathy and caring, regardless if you understand it. You can empathize with another person. So go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, with our children and trying to teach that, I think these stories are really great, and showing some of the historical movies that's been coming out are brilliant. But having just people speak about it, and tell real stories, I think is important for people who maybe didn't grow up or have been sheltered, or, just don't understand. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, all of that is very important. And again, that's why I say it's an ongoing conversation. I really feel like it's a cop out at a certain point, though, for people to say they don't know what's going on and they don't see it. Technology has given us all of this information. Unless you're living under a rock, you know what's going on in society. You may not feel it personally, but you know what's going on in society. And when you talk about how you grew up, I experienced being poor once I was a single mom. But growing up, where we lived, we were good. But even with that, you would still be treated better than I was, regardless of economical, differences, because of my color. And that's just a real problem. And it still exists in 2020. So from there, Charlie, what I want to move to now is strategy. What do we do now? We've identified the problem. We talked about, some of the tips as parents, as women, whatever. But moving forward, what I wanted to talk about a little bit is just strategy from a couple of layers. As non-people of color, to me, one of the things, and I'm sorry, I'm like losing power. Give me 1 second, I apologize.
Plug in, no worries.
I just saw it go out. Okay, there we go. Okay. One of the things for people,
like me, what can I do? Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I've got my white ladies in the background back there. I was just like, should I move this? Like, this is
no, you shouldn't.
Right.
So for one, acknowledge existence of other people who are not like you. Again, the whole I don't see color stuff, that doesn't fly. We all have our own whatever. And, we need to acknowledge that. Acknowledge it and honor what is special about each of us. All of us have special and unique traits, and we bond through those unique traits. We bond on commonality, and we bond on what is not so common between us. That's what helps us grow into this global humanity. Understand that you too can do something. If you are an at-home mom, which is a job, let's be very clear, and that's a story for another conversation.
Right.
But then understand that you are stewarding the next generation of people who are going to be hiring, are going to be police officers, are going to be engaging among people of all races. What you can do is participate actively in rearing productive citizens. That's what you can do. In the workforce, what you can do is acknowledge diversity and hit it head on, and don't pretend that it doesn't exist. And seek to advance people who are disenfranchised. Now, I believe in hard work. So I don't believe in being placed in something because I'm Black. I believe in being acknowledged for my hard work amongst my peers and being able to excel because of who I am. And if I know that as a leader and as a CEO of a company, or as whatever, that traditionally white men or white women or other people have been promoted before an equally intelligent Black woman or Black man, then I'm going to make a conscious effort to make sure that I level the playing ground. Another side of this for African Americans is, yes, we are hurting deeply. And again, I try not to judge how people react to their pain. I don't want to see our cities burning. I don't want to see, any types of peaceful protests go to riots. I understand though. I saw an African proverb the other day that maybe you saw me post, and it talks about to the effect of when a child does not feel accepted or feel in their community, they will burn down the village to feel its warmth.
Mm-hmm.
Sit in that for a minute.
Right.
That's a really deep thing. And it caused me to pause because as much as we can be judgmental about what's going on, number one, it's not just Black people that are doing it or inciting it. And number two, what is really behind that? Did it go from peaceful to riot because the police pushed someone? They sprayed mace or tear gassed someone. When we see that there are police officers actually around the world right now who are kneeling
Right.
with the protesters, who are walking with them, who are acknowledging that pain and are acknowledging that we need to be more engaged in the community as officers. That's another thing. And these police officers, a lot of times, are not even living and dwelling in the communities that they are called to police, protect, and serve.
Right.
So if they're more engaged, even if they're not living in those communities, then they'll know that Dante and his mom are struggling and doing the best they can. And maybe he should stop by sometimes and ask how Dante is doing. That's what engagement and serving really looks like. And he won't think that when Dante is going for a run at night that he's actually running from something or running to steal something. He'll know, hey, Dante, why are you out tonight? Is everything okay? Or just leave Dante alone. You know?
Let him run, get that stress out of his body.
Exactly. And that's all we're saying is give us the same type of grace. That's a big word right now. Extend the same grace as you would do with your son or your daughter or your mom. When my mother was in the hospital 2 years ago, I felt that she was not being treated well. And I ended up telling the doctor with tears in my eyes, pretend this is your mother laying there and treat her as you would treat your mother.
Yeah.
That's all I ask.
That's right. And I want to ask the same thing, and then also ask so treating people well, right? And then what can we do on a local level, on a federal level? What can we do to help move this in the right direction? And I think there are a lot of things that we can do. And so, I look at the different things as far as workforce and how we can go about bringing in and training people and educating them. And so I do think there are things that we can do to help. And so we'll look into those and continue to, be bringing that to the forefront in our conferences and things. But today was about my need to reach out and love on you for one, and all of my all of my friends out there, you know, that I'm like, I don't know what to say or do. I don't want to just do something because somebody else said post this or do this. I was like, I need to actually talk to someone. If I was near you, I'd be like, I need to hug you. That's my thing. And it's going from COVID and so much anxiety. I mean, just walking outside, even going to a peaceful protest would be anxiety of getting sick. You're like, what do you do? So I want to thank you so much for joining me and sharing with me. I think we could just talk for days.
We can.
Right. And we will continue to stay in touch. I know y'all are moving. I'm not sure if you wanted to say that or not, but
yeah, sure.
You're moving.
So
I'll be following you.
You're aware that my husband is an assistant women's basketball coach, and we met when he was coaching at Auburn, and I'm an Auburn alum, War Eagle, forever. Orange, I bleed orange and blue. So, but we transitioned from Auburn last year to Alabama, which was quite the move. But people like you have made it such an amazing experience. I can't even believe I had that deep-seated hate for Alabama for so many years.
Right.
But at the same time, the people just rolled out the crimson carpet for us, and we've just been blessed. Now we're on another leg of our journey. We're headed to North Carolina, to Chapel Hill, and My husband has accepted what he calls his last assistant coach position with women's basketball with the Lady Tar Heels. And we're excited for that. It's another opportunity, as I always say, to do more and to do better. So we're excited, and I really love that his heart is with helping those young women. Again, that's another conversation for another day, but from a leadership standpoint, he has been very effective, and I really, really commend him for having these conversations, and no matter what color as well. Um, COVID is still out there. We do have to be careful. And so as much as we are out, trying to get our point across to please be healthy, everyone. Please take care of yourselves and those around you. And please continue to extend grace and love in all that you do. Charlie, you're going to be deeply missed, but I know that you're just a FaceTime and a Zoom call away.
Yeah,
So,
I know where that is. I know where Chapel Hill is. So.
that's right. You're going to visit, and I'm going to visit, and all those great things. And the last thing I want to say is vote, people. When we talk about solutions, vote for leadership that is going to represent the grace and the values and the morals that are going to move the needle forward. And I don't think I have to express that any further.
No, I think that was a great way to end this meeting. And I look forward to doing it again with you sometimes, Candace.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Love you much.